Tom Verducci, Sports Illustrated, baseball senior writer, of course, working for Fox and MLB during the playoffs. He was in Arlington, Texas last night. The Dodgers and the Braves, Game 5 at 9 Eastern on Fox Sports 1. Tom, kind enough to join us here. You saw Kershaw go out for the sixth inning. What did you think?
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that. He had a low pitch count. Seemed to have things in order. The issue was when things started to unravel a little bit, right? I mean, we've been watching Dave Roberts in these postseasons the last few years, and especially third time around the lineup. I mean, he's quick with the trigger. It's the way the Dodgers do business. So to me, the flashpoint, it wasn't Kersh on Freeman because he's handled Freeman pretty well over the career. He made a bad pitch to Freeman, like a really bad pitch. And the Dodgers got burned with their defense, by the way. If you notice, that was a ground ball single turned into a double because they had Mookie Wilson shifted over to right center. That tells me Kershaw was supposed to get the ball away from Freeman. He didn't, got burned. The flashpoint was Ozuna. Ozuna actually said after the game, after that Ocoña infield hit, when the throw was made, went into the dugout and he went to second. Ozuna said he talked to Freeman and he said, "You get on base and then I'll get Gratterall." He was already assuming that Kershaw would not pitch to him a third time. So that's the flashpoint. Didn't have a problem with him starting the inning.
We can think that the Dodgers bats, woke up with 11 runs in that first inning, the previous game. But after the third inning of that game, those bats didn't do anything. I think they had basically 3 hits. So it's not like they came alive. They came alive for a moment. And then after that, that previous game and then last night, the Dodger bats have been pretty silent here. It's like Seager's the one guy. Mookie Betts hasn't done much here, so Bellinger hasn't done much. There's a lot of fingers if you're pointing for fingers of blame here, Tom.
Yeah, it's a great point because, we love talking about the pitching decisions or manager decisions on pitchers, right? But that's a great point. They really have not hit. And you think about the guys who have shut them down. After that big outburst in Game 3, it was Huascar Inoa, a 22-year-old right-hander with very little major league experience. And last night you had this kid, Bryce Wilson, who pitched an unbelievable game, had 7 career starts, 22 years old, hadn't pitched in a week and 2 weeks and a half. So, they're not seeing Cy Young winners shutting them down. Maybe it's just they're not familiar with these guys, but a big load has to go to the Dodger offense because it was number 1 in baseball this year.
I also wondered about this when I was looking at the NBA bubble. You saw a lot of young teams do well because you didn't have to travel to Staples and play in front of a hostile crowd. You're playing in a basically sterile environment there. These younger players, and the Braves had a lot of younger players, they're there they're not at Dodger Stadium, they're there in Arlington. There's no real, home field disadvantage here. There's no booing, there's none of that. Feels like that plays right into the Braves, that it's a young team. They may not know better, and they're not intimidated by any of this.
I'm with you, especially when it comes to the pitchers. There's no question about that. Actually, last night when the game started, of the 9 people on the field for the Braves, 5 of them were 23 and younger. And they're shutting down, this juggernaut of a team because the Dodgers in the regular season were a juggernaut. I'll tell you, because I've been in the bubble, I'm down there. It feels like a college or high school atmosphere because the families are really close to the field here in Arlington. There's 11,000 people, but they're scattered around. It's really not that loud. They still have some fake crowd noise in there, but they're all saying hello to mom and dad or the girlfriend. It really feels like an American Legion tournament. So you're right. I think it does help, especially these young pitchers. I mean, you put them in Dodger Stadium, 50,000 people, triple deck. That's a different atmosphere than a bubble.
If this doesn't work out for the Dodgers, what happens with Dave Roberts, if anything?
I don't think anything happens, really.
Okay.
Again, it depends how it ends the next couple of days. If it does, I'm not counting them out, Dan. I mean, this is a really, really good team. You saw the way they broke out in the first inning the other night. I'm not saying they're going to score 11 again. But man, the lineup is due to break out with something here at some point beyond what they did in that one inning. So I'm not ruling them out. It's going to be difficult, though. Don't get me wrong. Bullpen day for the Braves today. And then you've got Fried and Anderson. And I think both those 2 guys are legit. And Fried is probably the tougher matchup for the Dodgers. But both those guys are really good.
That curveball I hadn't seen much of him, but I when I watched him, I was like, oh my gosh.
I'm glad you mentioned that because the way they've shut down the Dodgers here overall, the one exception, This is not a high velocity team. We love talking about fastballs, and the Dodgers have a million guys coming out of the bullpen throwing literally 100 miles an hour. If you lined up the 16 playoff teams, the Braves are 13th in average velocity. So you've got Fried with that curveball. He's added the slider. You've got Anderson with that killer changeup. I thought Wilson did a great job mixing up his pitches. They're not beating the Dodgers with velocity or pure stuff. They're pitching this group. And you got to give them credit for being so young and this good.
What advice would you give the Astros when it comes to questions about 2017?
I go full on Nuke LaLoosh and be as dull and boring as possible, right? Don't take the bait, because you know what happened in that first round with Minnesota, right? Carlos Correa, they got through Minnesota. He's like, oh, we're back. You know, we're like the Bills. You wanted to get rid of us. You can't get rid of us. I think some guys talked to him because the next round they were like very chill about it. I think that's the way I would handle it. Don't give anybody any more ammunition. You've done plenty of that already.
And Altuve's had a couple of big hits. Are his throwing woes that was only one game there?
No, but I can tell you a story here. Before that series, the Rays scouts in their hitters meeting before the series, they said, when you hit a ground ball to second base, even a routine one, bust it down the line. We're not sure if this guy's going to make the play. So they saw something there with his body language, how deliberate he was, the arm, whatever it was. They put those guys on notice. So if you notice, Choi and Lau busted it down the line on routine balls and put pressure on him. I'm not sure that goes away that quickly, Dan.
And you've been around long enough that we had Chuck Knobloch and we have Steve Sachs. Mackie Sasser couldn't throw the ball back to the mound. Did you ever do, I'm sure you did, but talk to a psychologist or somebody who would look at this and say, what happens in the brain when, Rick Ankiel's another one.
Yeah, it's when athletes start to think, right? They start to think about the process, the lack of thought. You hear that from hitters all the time, right? I wasn't thinking anything, just see the ball, hit it. It's funny. The guy pitching, he pitched in relief last night for the Braves, Tyler Matzik. He had the yips as a pitcher, right? He was out of baseball, former number one pick out of baseball. It took him a year going to see psychologists, psychiatrists, throwing every day on his own. And it took him another year in the minor leagues, independent ball, to get back. I think more guys just don't get back. It's really hard to get back from it. And it seems to affect second baseman, as you mentioned there, and the occasional pitcher.
But it's an odd throw from second base. It's like an odd throw when a comebacker goes to the mound. The pitcher he's guiding it. Shortstop and third, you have to unleash it. It's rare when you get, a looper that you can throw in there. Second was always odd. And I was a former shortstop, so you get it and you fire. Second, sometimes you fire, sometimes you lob it, and it feels like sometimes you're right in between.
Well, I think you're on something there. When you have a little bit of extra time, that clock tells you have a little bit of time. That's when the brain starts to get in the way of the muscles, right? If you're a shortstop in the hole, third base, long throw, you don't have time to think about it. Second baseman knows he has time, and I think that works against them. If
I would have told you when the Marlins had their outbreak that they were going to make the playoffs, what would you have said?
No way. I mean, really. I mean, Don Mattingly did an incredible job with that team. I mean, you think about it, they had 18 people out. I think it was 174 roster moves they went through. They had 20 guys make their major league debuts in a 60-game season. I mean, it was crazy. But, listen, that young group found itself. Mattingly did a great job. Their young pitching is legit. I didn't think it would come this quickly. But, again, Dan, you made the point about nobody in the stands. I think that helped them. It was sort of a bonding experience, too, to go through what they did. But bottom line was, I think Mattingly has to be the manager of the year for the job that he did with that group.
Have fun tonight there. 9 Eastern on Fox Sports 1, and it'll be Braves and Dodgers again. Do you think we're going to live to see another game?
I do. I can't count out the Dodgers. You know what? I think it's a low-scoring game tonight again, though, because that Braves bullpen, it's a bullpen game. Brian Snitker's got a lot of good options. So, most teams are up against it with a bullpen game, not the Braves.
Thank you, Tom. I know you're busy. We appreciate you making some time for us.
You got it, Dan. Have a good one.
That's Tom Verducci, Sports Illustrated, senior writer working for Fox Sports and MLB